Okay, so before I start this video off, I'll just cut in with a disclaimer. I am not well. I've not been well for the last few months, as some people know, and so that's why I've not been making Azur Lane videos. And realistically, I would not be making this video if it wasn't for the fact that this is the ink-stained steel Sakura event. This is too big an event to sit out and not talk about, because this event is so important and it was the biggest event to date in terms of Azur Lane. So yeah, I need to talk about this because realistically there are two things that people want to know about when it comes to events, and that is what ships are worth getting and are these ships any good. So in terms of what ships are worth getting, that is tied heavily to why this event is worth talking about, and that is Nagato. Nagato is in this event, and Nagato is absolutely game changing. She changed the meta on the Japanese servers and the Chinese servers, because as soon as she came out, majority of the commanders started using Sakura Empire fleets. So you generally started seeing Nagato with Akagi and Kaga. So yeah, you can guess from that she is really worth getting, because as soon as the meta changes and there is one ship responsible for it, you can gather that that ship is seriously important and seriously worthwhile. There are only a few ships that have had that effect, and yeah. So in terms of where she sits, she's one of the best ships in the game. She's right up there. She is far superior to a lot of these other ships. She, I would say, is far better than a Maggie. If you are thinking of what would you do, would you replace a Maggie with Nagato? If you kind of like are debating whether you would do that, then yes, absolutely. Replace a Maggie with Nagato in your fleet. Run your Akaga pair with Nagato, because you will get far better results with them, because Nagato's skill will give you 20% extra damage from your Akage pair. The way to really think of Nagato is like Queen Elizabeth on steroids, and any HMS player will tell you just how important Queen Elizabeth is for an HMS fleet. HMS fleet players will tell you that Queen Elizabeth is the absolute backbone for that fleet. Nagato is the absolute backbone for an IJN fleet. So yeah, that is just how good she is. So let's talk about her skill. Her main command skill will give you 20% damage boost to air power. So all aircraft carriers are going, well, not air power, all aircraft carriers are going to be doing 20% more damage if you have Nagato in the fleet. That is important, that is huge, that is significant. You don't want to miss out on that. Then all Sakura Empire fleet ships are going to get up to 10% firepower increase with Nagato in the fleet. All Sakura Empire fleet ships are going to get up to 20% accuracy increase and up to 20% reload. Yeah, you want to get that as well. So Nagato is pretty awesome. So 10% firepower, pretty good. All your Vanguard ships doing 10% more firepower. Your Mogami is going to be pretty nice. If you got Takao, yeah, again, pretty good results there. And accuracy, reload, that is even going to affect your carriers in your main fleet. So, yeah, it's why you want her. She is absolutely amazing. And that's 20%. This is why I say she is Queen Elizabeth on steroids, because Queen Elizabeth's skill is a flat 15% increase. Granted, it's across the board and it covers more skills, but Nagato chooses a set specific amount of skills and it is an impressive amount. So she selects a bunch of things and then she will just totally allow you to tear things apart. She is designed to make your carriers absolutely deadly. And then the other reason she is an absolute Queen Elizabeth on steroids is because her base stats are an improvement on Queen Elizabeth's, with one notable exception, and that is her anti-aircraft skill. Her anti-aircraft stat is lower than Queen Elizabeth's, but not by a huge amount. Her anti-aircraft stat is 159 when maxed out at level 100. Queen Elizabeth is 185, so there's not that much in it if we are comparing those two ships. The only real big change is when you compare her to, say, North Carolina. North Carolina is 368. So when people say that Nagato has that weakness of anti-aircraft, that is what they mean. Compared to the other battleships that have a huge amount of anti-aircraft stats, Nagato is sorely lacking. But if you were to compare her to the battleships that are of a similar kind, like Queen Elizabeth, then it isn't a huge decrease. So yeah, you can look at it in that sense. Her firepower is good, her health is really solid and really amazing. It's close to 7,000, so it's an impressive chunk of health there. But what really makes her a Queen Elizabeth on steroids is her Big 7 Sakura skill. Her Big 7 Sakura skill is like the Big 7 skill, but her own special version on it. The important thing to note is that it has its own wave formation. So you know how the normal Big 7 skill moves across. If you look at this one and see how it moves across the field, you will notice that there are two different wave components to it. You have the larger part to it that moves across the centre, and then you've got smaller bullets that move around the outside of it as well. So those compose the two aspects of this attack. And you'll also notice that the bullets, they actually move across, and the back of it doesn't fully reach across the screen, it just reaches across part of the screen and it just cuts out about that section, and then the front kind of like gets to about there before it cuts out. So that is something to be aware of when you use it. But then there is something else to note, and this is a slight correction that I need to be making on something that has been said elsewhere, and that is the damage output of this attack. Now, the Big 7 skill, the Big 7 barrage, does close to 7,000 damage, and the real raw damage is 6,864 damage. This is a normal projectile attack, so that is the raw damage. The Big 7 Sakura attack, the main central part of it, that is doing 5,500 damage. and that is an HE bullet. And if you look at the damage multiplier on it, you get a 120% damage multiplier against the light ships, and 100% damage multiplier against medium ships, and then 8% against small ships. Then the surrounding smaller bullets, they're doing 2000 damage, and then their multiplier is 90% against light ships and 120% against medium ships, with 70% against heavy ships. But again, this is also a HE projectile, so both of it is HE, so you've got the shell multipliers to it, whereas the standard Big 7 projectile is a normal projectile, so that is something to consider. And the smaller one does have a bonus to it, a bonus effect. I'm not entirely sure what that bonus effect is because I don't quite read the kanji, but I can figure out most of the other stuff, so I do know what a lot of this stuff is reading and meaning. But I've got this chart and it allows you to see what the effects are and what the damage is. So that is her actual barrage damage and what the raw damage is and things, and you can see the damage multipliers there. But it's still incredibly impressive. The only downside is that 40% proc rate on it. It's not terrible, it's not great either. Not when you compare it to, say, some ships that have a 70% proc rate. But then there are ships that have worse. So, yeah. So realistically, Nagato is the ship to get. She is definitely one of the best ships to get. Even if you look at the drawbacks and things and say those are negatives, they're not extreme negatives. If anything, you can say, well, they bring her in line with some of the other ships and things, but she is definitely one of the top ships in the game. So everybody should be looking to get her. And I mean everybody should be looking to get her. Even if you don't care about min-maxing, in that case you might not really care about getting her, but you know, it's good to have her in reserve. If you really are set in your ways and set into getting just your one fleet and playing with your one fleet, I can understand that. I mean, realistically, I've been an HMS commander for my entire game, and I play HMS. But I still get a bunch of these ships. I've got the key ships, I've leveled them up, and I leveled up Nagato, and I do have her in reserve just in case. And realistically, that's how you should treat her. If you find it that you just don't really want to be using her as a main fleet and things, you don't want to be changing your play style and things, have her just in case. For everybody else, absolutely go for her, because she is just that good. Okay, so that is the bulk of this video. Everything else, realistically, they all pale compared to Nagato. Mutsu is fine, she is a bigger 7 ship, okay? So she's again got the big 7 Sakura barrage, so you know what that does now. But she's a big 7. She's got similar big 7 stats, so yeah, she's a fine big 7 ship. So yeah, she's worth getting if you want to get a good big 7 ship. She's not one of the best absolute top tier battleships, but she is really good and worth getting if you want to get her. As for, say, Kawakaze is fine. She's good. She's definitely above average. She's generally considered to be similar in terms of performance to Udachi, but if you've got Ayanami and you've got Yukikaze, you're probably not going to be wanting to use her because you get Ayanami, you got Yukikaze, and then you get Jinsu. And yeah. Or you probably would have had, say, Megami or some of the others. So there are better options out there. But if you'd like a design and things, then, you know, she's fine. She's above average. She's worth pursuing if you like her. But, you know, she's not an absolute must-get ship. She's definitely not Nagato. Then we've got the Congo class. The Congo class are a bit of an issue. Congo and Haruna, let's be honest, they are battle cruisers, and I've talked about this before. The battle cruisers, until you had a Maggie, there was no real good battle cruiser other than Hood. So, yeah, they are generally average ships. They sit around the midpoint in terms of tiers. They are as good as, say, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. That was slightly worse than Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. And, yeah, they are just fine. They are probably not worth pursuing. If you've got Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, then you don't need to really worry about it. If you like their designs and you want to get them, get them. If you like to collect ships, get them. If you are concerned about saving up your cubes and things, then you know you don't need to worry about it. But then again, if you think about it, you can get these from the event shop. So realistically, why would you not get them? So yeah, it's fine to get them. So they are from the shop. You can get Congo as a drop. So you're not even saving cubes by ignoring them. Mutsu, you get her from points. So yeah, you can go and get her because she's perfectly worth getting. But Kawakaze, she's generally alright, but she's construction, so you can get her as a drop. But as I said, if you got, say, the other ones, you don't really need to worry about getting her. So that is a consideration there. If you're lucky enough to get her, then yeah, she's fine and it's good. So when it comes to the other ships, the destroyers, you've got Ushio, Yusuke, Hatsuki, Fumisuki and Asashio. I could lump them all together. Realistically, Yusuke and Hatsuki are the better two of the bunch. Those are squarely average. The others are definitely forgettable. But realistically, let's just say you're not going to use them. If you got any of the other ships, realistically, why would you use them? So, being squarely average, seriously. I would say that Yosuke and Hatsuki, they are definitely usable because they are squarely average. But Ushio, Fumisuki and Asashio are not really worth it. So, yeah. realistically, I would say save your cubes. Ushio is from the event shops, and she's also a drop. So you can consider just kind of like saving your currency and get her if you really want to. If you want to collect the ships, then get her. There's no reason not to. But the others, it's more of a save your cubes things. If they come along in the construction for the other ships, then that's good. But I wouldn't really go out of my way to construct them unless you are really looking to collect all of the ships. There's no real reason to go out of your way to craft these ships, really. So, yeah.